When the lad saw that, he wasn't long in getting down from the tree, and in throwing the bridle over its head, and then it was so tame you could hold it with a pack-thread. And what do you think? That horse was dappled too, and so like Dapplegrim you couldn't tell which was which. Then the lad bestrode the new dapple he had broken, and rode home to the palace, and old Dapplegrim ran loose by his side. So when he got home, there stood the king out in the yard. "Can you tell me now", said the lad, "which is the horse I have caught and broken, and which is the one I had before? If you can't, I think your daughter is fairly mine." Then the king went and looked at both dapples, high and low, before and behind, but there wasn't a hair on one which wasn't on the other as well. "No", said the king, "that I can't, and since you've got my daughter such a grand horse for her wedding, you shall have her with all my heart. But still we'll have one trial more, just to see whether you are fated to have her. First she shall hide herself twice, and then you shall hide yourself twice. If you can find out her hiding place, and she can't find out yours, why then you're fated to have her, and so you shall have her." "That's not in the bargain either", said the lad, "but we must just try, since it must be so." And so the Princess went off to hide herself first. So she turned herself into a duck, and lay swimming on a pond that was close to the palace. But the lad only ran down to the stable and asked Dapplegrim what she had done with herself. "Oh, you only need to take your gun", said Dapplegrim, "and go down to the brink of the pond, and aim at the duck which lies swimming about there, and she'll soon show herself." So the lad snatched up his gun and ran off to the pond. "I'll just take a pop at this duck", he said, and began to aim at it. "Nay, nay, dear friend, don't shoot, it's I", said the Princess. So he had found her once. The second time the Princess turned herself into a loaf of bread, and laid herself on the table among 4 other loaves, and so like was she to the others, no one could say which was which. But the lad went again down to the stable to Dapplegrim, and said how the Princess had hidden herself again, and he couldn't tell at all what became of her. "Oh, just take and sharpen a good bread knife", said Dapplegrim, "and do as if you were going to cut in two the 3rd loaf on the left hand of those 4 loaves which are lying on the dresser in the king's kitchen, and you'll find her soon enough." Yes, he was down in the kitchen in no time, and began to sharpen the biggest bread knife he could lay hands on. Then he caught hold of the 3rd loaf on the left hand, and put the knife to it as though he was going to cut it in two. "I'll just have a slice off this loaf", he said. "Nay, dear friend", said the Princess, "don't cut, it's I." So he had found her twice. Then he was to go and hide, but he and Dapplegrim had settled it all so well beforehand, it wasn't easy to find him. First he turned himself into a tick, and hid himself in Dapplegrim's left nostril, and the Princess went about hunting him everywhere, high and low. At last she wanted to go into Dapplegrim's stall, but he began to bite and kick, so that she daren't go near him, and so she couldn't find the lad. "Well", she said, "since I can't find you, you must show where you are yourself." And in a trice the lad stood there on the stable floor. The second time Dapplegrim told him again what to do, and then he turned himself into a clod of earth, and stuck himself between Dapple's hoof and shoe on the near forefoot. So the Princess hunted up and down, out and in, everywhere. At last she came into the stable, and wanted to go into Dapplegrim's loose box. This time he let her come up to him, and she pried high and low, but under his hoofs she couldn't come, for he stood firm as a rock on his feet, and so she couldn't find the lad. "Well, you must just show yourself, for I'm sure I can't find you", said the Princess, and as she spoke the lad stood by her side on the stable floor. "Now you are mine indeed", said the lad, "for now you can see I'm fated to have you." This he said both to the father and daughter. "Yes, it is so fated", said the king, "so it must be." Then they got ready the wedding in right down earnest, and lost no time about it, and the lad got on Dapplegrim, and the Princess on Dapplegrim's match, and then you may fancy they were not long on their way to the church. End of section 47.